Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is draft season, and from the TCO studio for Vikings at Home NFL Draft Preview, I've lost my breath. It's my first time in this building in more than 6 months. I haven't even met Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, the great first-round pick from last year. This is Vikings at Home, your NFL Draft Preview show. And speaking of first-round picks, we have a couple of nice ones for you. Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. Adam Schefter, ESPN Senior Insider. We have a lot to accomplish, and I'm super excited. We're on the clock. Let's go! And boom! Hashtag Vikings at Home and the Draft Preview show is underway, courtesy of Mystic Lake Casino Hotel and one of the best National Football League related opinions in the estimation of the Vikings Entertainment Network. Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, joins us now, also with NBC's Football Night in America. Mike, PFT, your creation from right around 20 years ago, has covering the NFL the way you guys do at that website, has it impacted you in any way as a fan?
Well, I think anytime that something that you enjoy immensely becomes a hobby and then becomes your job, it changes the way that you experience that thing. And yeah, I consume football differently than I used to. I follow all of it now instead of just narrow slivers like I used to. And I don't get as fired up as I maybe once did for a certain team that wears purple uniforms that isn't the Baltimore Ravens, because I have to be neutral and I have to watch all the games. I can't just turn off the TV and go on a media blackout when Gary Anderson misses a 39-yard field goal that could have put a team in the Super Bowl, and then I just pretend the NFL doesn't exist for 48 hours. The world has to continue to go on. And so it makes it a lot easier than it used to years ago to overcome defeat. And there's no time to enjoy victory. You have to keep moving. You have to keep covering the sport. But really, the truth is, like anything else, when something that you love becomes something that you do, you don't love it as much as you used to. But you also don't hate it either, or you wouldn't be doing it in the first place.
I saw Peter King's weekly piece on PFT, and I agree. This is a weird draft. Do you expect the 2021 draft to be wild and crazy? And if so, how may it differ from others?
Well, it's so unpredictable because of the pandemic, because so many guys didn't have a complete set of reliable film from 2020. So many guys opted out, and I believe that for those guys it was the right decision based upon the information that was available at the time. Maybe in hindsight, some of those guys would say, well, wish I would have played, but at the time you had to make a good decision. At the time, the NCAA was not involved in providing consistent and uniform standards that would have made it safer than maybe it is when you go team by team, school by school, conference by conference. The problem is you got no film for the guys who opted out. And I know that some teams out there look a little bit differently at the guys who opted out, even though they shouldn't. I think that's what makes it a little bit more unpredictable. And also you take out the scouting combine, you take out the private workouts, you take out the ability that we used to have to track who was visiting whom. Now they can talk to anybody they want to talk to. I think that's part of it too, that makes it harder to get a feel for how the names are going to come off the board.
Michael, 3 quarterback names we hear a lot associated with round number 1, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. How concerned would you be, given they are all so inexperienced, those 3, using a first-round pick on those guys?
This is your opportunity to get somebody that you believe is going to be your quarterback, not for 5 years, not for 10 years. And I think the longevity of Tom Brady and the way that we've seen the quarterbacks perform better right out of the gates, that's what I think is driving teams to roll the dice on the franchise guy. Because if you guessed right, position solved, 10 years, 15 years, maybe longer. You guess wrong, Look at the Jets. You're going to be back in that spot before you know it to do it again. Maybe with a different coach, maybe with a different GM, but the owner is going to be the same. And the owner is the one who profits tremendously from having that franchise quarterback. And don't underestimate the value of that nudge from the owner. One of the privileges of being a billionaire is you never have to give direct orders. You just have to make your preferences known. And if the people around you are smart, they'll listen, they'll do it. And then if it's a quarterback and it works, everything's great for years to come.
Now, Belichick and 15, currently right behind the Minnesota Vikings at 14. And Bill and the team blew minds last year when they took that Lenore Ryan safety with their first pick after trading out of the first round. So after all the money the Patriots have spent in free agency, what are you expecting from the Pats early in the draft?
I know there's some sizzle out there that maybe they'll trade up a few spots or into the bottom of the top 10 to get a quarterback. I think that overlooks how much they really like Cam Newton. I think Newton is their guy. I think Bill Belichick loves him. I've heard he loves him. And the guy has worked hard. The guy does what Belichick wants. I think they want to see how far Newton can take them. And also, they're building a team to win now. So I think whatever they do in this draft is going to be calculated toward guys who can get on the field and help them be better right now. I could see a quarterback mid-rounds, late rounds. They drafted a bunch of quarterbacks when Tom Brady was the starter. This idea, though, of going quarterback with that first-round pick, I don't get it. I don't buy it. I think they're in a prime position to get a great player who slips through the cracks. One of the benefits of having so many quarterbacks go, if you have 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10 and you have 15, it's like having pick number 10 if you're not going to take a quarterback. You get a premier player. And if one of the premier players they like isn't there, then that's when the door opens to maybe trade back some and get more lottery tickets. But I think this idea that Justin Fields, Trey Lance, something like that could be a move that Belichick makes, I just don't buy it. I think they like Cam Newton more than people realize, and they don't need to go reach for a quarterback.
Okay, with your lifetime favorite team, with the Vikings at 14, what can they do there and throughout the draft to become better, not only than last year, but maybe run down Green Bay?
Well, it's not going to be easy to run down Green Bay. Green Bay's been 13-3 consecutive years. They still have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. And, the Vikings have that gaping hole at left tackle. I've seen some chatter that maybe they do a deal to get Orlando Brown, who has made his discontent known in Baltimore and wants to be a left tackle. But you got to come out of the draft with an answer. And I know Ezra Cleveland is the guy who's penciled in to slide over. But if you do that, then you got a hole at left guard. So that offensive line, side to side, all 5 spots, got to be a little bit better. We've talked about this before, Paul, the idea that Kirk Cousins is very good with the play that's called, not very good with the play that you have to come up with on the fly. The more the offense can run the play that's called without the walls collapsing, the better the offense can be. I also think the pass rush needs to be beefed up. They've done a lot on the back end to make it better. Best way to make your back end of your defense better is to improve the front end and give the quarterback no time to. You and I could play corner, left side, right side, if you have a dominant front 4 that is keeping the quarterback from ever letting go of the football. And that's what the Vikings need to get back to. That has been an issue, obviously, last year, and they need to keep it from being an issue this year.
All right, Clint Kubiak is the new offensive coordinator here. Grew up around his dad winning a bunch of rings. Clint's very, very smart, but he's new. So what are some keys for the Minnesota Vikings to keep that offense high end?
Well, I think one of the reasons Clint Kubiak got the job is it's going to be the same offense. You don't want to rip up the playbook and introduce yet another personality, yet another attack, yet another mindset when it's a fairly important year for head coach Mike Zimmer and GM Rick Spielman. The Vikings are on this roller coaster, and it's an odd-numbered year, so they should make it to the playoffs. And then the even-numbered year, they don't make it to the playoffs. And if they ever put 2 together in a bad way, that's going to be a bad outcome for Zimmer. And I think he really needs to get to the playoffs this year. And I think that gave Clint Kubiak a leg up in that hunt for a new offensive coordinator, because they're going to have continuity. But look, this is one of the realities. Defensive head coach who essentially hands the keys to the offense to the offensive coordinator, that gives the offensive coordinator a lot of power. From the moment we first heard that Gary Kubiak was contemplating retirement, I felt like it was always going to go this way because the goal is continuity.
Okay, given Green Bay legitimately is the target at which to shoot in the division for sure, maybe the NFC, we'll see how it plays out. Do you feel in any way this could be Aaron Rodgers' final year with the Packers?
Well, I think it definitely could be. And there's two ways to look at it. The team, which wants to keep Aaron Rodgers on a year-to-year basis. I think that's one of the reasons why the Packers didn't exercise their contractual prerogative to restructure Aaron Rodgers' contract. They paid out a $6.8 million roster bonus instead of taking that and a large part of the salary, making it a signing bonus, reducing the cap number this year. You reduce the cap number this year by moving money around. What happens next year? You get a big cap charge if you trade him before June 1. I think they're trying to hold out that possibility, and then let's just see what happens. Mark Murphy, the CEO of the team, I think, has found a way to keep Aaron Rodgers in what I call a sweet spot of being pissed off. Pissed off enough to go out there and achieve at a high level, but not so pissed off that he agitates to get out. The question is, if the Packers want to keep the relationship going after this year and not flip to Jordan Love, does Aaron Rodgers make a play? So there's two sides to this. Do the Packers want to keep him after this year? Does he want to stay? And I think it's pointing toward some sort of a divorce after this season.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. Definitely a big opinion and very plugged in, like Adam Schefter. He is the preeminent NFL newsbreaker in the land and ESPN's senior insider. Senior insider, equity or age?
Probably age, Paul. I think if you do something for 12 years and you're 54 years old, they have to call you senior as a matter of rule. So I don't think it's anything that I've accomplished. It's just something that basically, like I said, you do something long enough, you reach my age, you're senior.
Adam has degrees from the University of Michigan and Northwestern, which is perfect for the purple and gold, in my opinion, given defensive end Kwity Paye and offensive tackle Rashawn Slater would look great wearing Minnesota Vikings colors. The Wolverine first. What do you like about defensive end Kwity Paye?
Well, I think he can step in right away and provide pass rush. He's a good, effective pass rusher and can come in and contribute right away. That would be a good pick for Minnesota. I don't think Rashawn Slater will be there at 14. Minnesota's 14, right, in the first round?
Yeah.
I would be really surprised if Rashawn Slater is there at 14. I've heard his name too many times from too many people who like him too much to make me think that he is going to slide to 14. And if he does happen to slide to that spot, turn in the card.
So from what you hear when you're digging, and you dig better than anybody, the offensive tackles in this draft, it truly is that deep. I'm not going to say like wide receivers last year, Mr. Schefter, but I mean, it's incredibly deep for offensive tackles, right?
There are a lot of them, but look, offensive linemen, good offensive linemen are hard to find. And I always find it interesting that you talk to teams and they almost downplay the need, importance, significance of interior offensive linemen at the draft. They get pushed down like they're not very valuable. And then when it comes to the final cut of the year, everybody's looking for interior offensive linemen. I'm like, where was that need back in the draft when everybody was downplaying the need for them? So, yes, this is a draft rich in tackles. It's got some good offensive linemen. If it were me, I'd load up. If I were Jacksonville drafting a good young quarterback, I'd be drafting a lot of offensive linemen to protect him. If I were the New York Jets drafting a good young quarterback, I would be drafting a lot of offensive linemen to protect him with. And those are very valuable. They're hard to find. You can develop them. And this would be a good draft to go find some of them, Paul.
Ain't no doubt about that. And Schefter has a terrific podcast. And on a recent podcast, former NFL quarterback Chris Sims likes BYU quarterback Zach Wilson more than Trevor Lawrence. Why?
Well, let me say this to you. The Adam Schefter podcast, Chris Sims came on, and I know people think it's like clickbait and we're just doing that for headline. He's just saying it. The fact of the matter is, as I pointed out on the podcast, in 2017, when Mitchell Trubisky was universally regarded as the top quarterback in the draft, Chris Sims liked Patrick Mahomes more than anybody. The next year in the 2018 draft, when Baker Mayfield went 1, the two quarterbacks that Chris Sims put atop his rankings were Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, ahead of Baker, ahead of Sam Darnold, ahead of Josh Rosen. How'd that work out? Last year, he liked Justin Herbert on the record better than he liked Tua Tagovailoa.
Wow.
So, again, there's a track record. Now, that doesn't mean that Zach Wilson's going to be a better NFL quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. But what it does mean is that I recommend listening to his words and taking what he says to heart, because he's not just saying it for shock value and to get a headline on it. That's what he believes. He believes that Trevor Lawrence is not quite the NFL quarterback prospect that Zach Wilson is right now.
Defensively, Schefter, is Miami defensive end Jalen Phillips perhaps the greatest wild card in the draft? And I say that because he was a beast last season for the Canes. Yeah. We have the concussions. We have a wrist that may be chronic. We have a transfer. Jalen Phillips is a wild card.
And wanted to retire too, right, Paul? Like, he did retire at one point or another. And so in a year where there are a ton of questions about a ton of players, there are a ton of questions about Jalen Phillips. And the guy is enormously gifted and talented and can do a lot of different things. If you want pass rush, that might be a guy to get. But the fact of the matter is there are these questions, there are these issues, and that's what each team is left to investigate now as it decides whether to pick him.
With the Minnesota Vikings, Adam, into the 2021 season, what do you think can be done via the draft to help us run down Green Bay and win the division?
Well, I think when I talk to people about what they think the Vikings are going to do in the draft, and you know the team better than anyone, Paul, they think that Minnesota is going to be looking for help on both lines, offensive and defensive and offensive. Break it down however you want. And so wherever they find the value to be, that's where they'll go and draft somebody. And I think that they could use help in both those areas. I would expect that that'll be the case next week when Minnesota's picking, that you'll see them add offensive lineman, defensive lineman, offensive lineman, no particular order, depends on who's there.
Now with the quarterbacks, and as I call the ballyhooed five, from Lawrence to Wilson to Fields, Lance, Jones, eliminate them. From what you're hearing or what you know, is there another quarterback or quarterbacks that you think may get into the NFL, the right spot, and eventually tear it up?
Oh, you hear a lot of intrigue about Davis Mills from Stanford. I think people like him. Kellen Mond from Texas A&M is another guy that I think people like. Look, quarterbacks have a fascination every year. And the fact of the matter here is, of these 5 in the first round that you've outlined, Paul, probably 3 of them are going to hit and 2 of them are going to bust.
Right.
That's probably what's going to happen. Maybe 2 hit, maybe 3 bust. Okay. Maybe 4 hit, maybe 1 hit. Like, we don't know, but we'll say conservatively 3 hit, 2 bust.
Yeah.
You tell me the 2 that bust. I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah.
Right. And then guess what? The teams don't know who it's going to be either. Because if they did, they'd have the right pick every time. And so when we get into the first round and pick those 5 quarterbacks, and then you start flashing ahead to the other quarterbacks, it's just as much, even more so of a dart throw then than it is early on. So when I give you 2 names, Kellen Mond and Davis, one will probably hit, one will probably miss, maybe both will miss, right? So again, there'll be a quarterback somewhere along the way in this draft, I don't know, round 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere, that makes his mark in the NFL. And again, sometimes it's not just who the player is, but it's the situation that he's placed in. Would Tom Brady, if he were drafted in Cincinnati, been able to elevate that entire organization and have the type of success he did in New England? You tell me.
No.
Maybe some,
yeah,
but hard to imagine exactly the same, right?
Yeah. But
he got placed in a perfect spot with a great coach, with a great organization, and look what happened. So, and I've heard this, back when I covered Denver as a newspaper beat writer for 16 years, from 1990 to 2005, people used to say, well, John Elway, who made who? John Elway made Mike Shanahan, or Mike Shanahan made John Elway? You hear the same thing, Joe Montana, Bill Walsh, Brett Favre, and Mike McCarthy, like, we go back and forth. And I just think the fact of the matter is, the most successful teams, coach helps the quarterback and the quarterback helps the coach. It goes both ways. Why does it have to be one way, right? And there are enough teams that haven't helped quarterbacks. That's why some of these quarterbacks wash out.
Schefter, this Gators tight end, Kyle Pitts, I mean, when you read about him or hear about him, it's like it's a cross between Travis Kelce and Mark Bavaro. So he's going to be really good, probably. Do you think he's going to change games right out of the gate?
Well, what I would say, Paul, is that teams that I've spoken to, front office members I've spoken to, they tell me that Kyle Pitts, and let me say I've watched limited tape of the guy, but they say that Kyle Pitts is maybe the best player in this draft, including Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Certainly he's the best non-quarterback in this draft and might just be the best player in this draft. And he has a chance to become the highest drafted tight end here. He's going to go high. I think there's a real chance he's going to go 4 to Atlanta. There are a number of people that love him as a player. And again, what I would say is it's great to hype him up. It's great that he's got these talents and traits. And yes, he's got a chance to be a star player. But let's see him go produce at the NFL level first before we're anointing him the next cross between Travis Kelce and Mark Bavaro.
What if Shanny and John Lynch moved up to the 3 spot to bookend George Kittle with Kyle Pitts? Are you kidding me?
They didn't.
That's what I understand because I follow you on Twitter. Thank you, Schefter.
Hey, Paul, enjoy the draft. Thanks for having me, and good luck in your fantasy basketball playoffs.
God bless you, bud. Thank you. Adam Schefter doesn't get much better than that. And speaking of doesn't get much better than that, what a treat it is to be back in the beautiful TCO Performance Center studio. Holy cow, is it beautiful in here? Just like a week from today, it'll be beautiful with the National Football League draft as the Minnesota Vikings currently, emphasis on currently, are slated to select 14th. On behalf of the Vikings Entertainment Network and all of us here at Twin Cities Orthopedic Performance Center, I'm Paul Allen. Thanks for watching.